Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Gina Gardiner and Friends. My guest today has been a friend for a long time. She is an amazing lady, businesswoman, entrepreneur. She's a photographer extraordinaire. If she can make me look good, then she's really got to be good. And the whole theme of today is that life's too short. So Sally Parkinson, also known as Sparkles, welcome. Tell us a bit about you.
Hello, and yes, thanks for having me on. A bit about me. Well, where do I start, really? A bit about me is that I'm now a photographer and self-employed with my studio and everything at home. But you know, and everything's great in that respect. But it's been quite a journey getting here, and there's been quite a lot of life lessons along the way. So. A bit about me is that I live in Braintree in Essex. I have my partner here and two cats, and my studio in the garden where I welcome families, newborns, babies, all sorts of things, animals, and photography is my life.
It's interesting because you've been a photographer all the time that I've known you, but I know life was very different before then. And our theme is all about life's too short. So before you were a photographer, what was going on?
Well, we don't have all day, but I've had quite a number of different careers, if you like, but all in a similar trait to a certain extent up until around 2006. So very briefly, after leaving school, I went to hotel school. I did a hotel management course. And then got jobs in hotels. That taught me a lot about people and how to handle people and different types of people. All that, it was incredibly good grounding for life, really. After that, I went into the events industry, and I also worked on a cruise ship for a couple of years ago as well. That's another story. And all that experience led to my working in the events industry. And me eventually getting a job in a place where I was very miserable.
You know, there are so many people, aren't there, who are doing a job because they want the paycheck, but find it soul destroying, boring, just not who they are. And they feel trapped because how will I pay my bills? I mean, how did you manage the transition, bearing in mind that you went from a salary to starting up your own business, which is always tricky?
It was a massive shock, actually. And it's not until you get to the end of the month and you don't get that paycheck that you realise quite how much in the doo-doo you personally could be, you know. But my life in hotels, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the buzz, and this job was on the corporate side of things. And when I was at the events, I was really happy and enjoying it, but I didn't like the office life. It just wasn't me. And I've never clock watched so much in my life, and I just knew that I had to get out. On the other side of the coin, I always had an interest in photography and wanted to set up a studio. I moved house. I lived on my own at the time. I moved house, and there was a garage at the end of the garden. And I thought, I'm not going to put a car in there. I'm going to set that up as a studio. So I took myself off on a course. I was still employed at the time. And then, I just became so incredibly miserable and unhappy in that job. I mean, my weekends were ruined because it was just the dread of going in on that Monday morning. So I took the plunge. I put my mortgage on a payment holiday. I don't know if you can still do that, but I put it like 2 or 3 months, so I didn't have that worry. And then I left, and I can't quite believe I did it now. But I remember sitting on the stairs in my house thinking, I can't do this anymore. So I left, and yes, it was hard. I got little jobs in hotels. I cleaned bedrooms and did some chambermaiding for a while. Waitressing. I had those skills. I did anything I could just to get by. And gradually, very gradually, I kind of climbed out of that. I then got myself a part-time job working for a local events beautiful Leomani Tower. It's a Tudor building. They have weddings and events there, and I got myself a part-time job there. So that gave me a bit of security, and I was back in, you know, in an environment that I was happy in. So I did that for 4 years, and in 2010, the owner said to me, "Something's got to change," because I was very much trying to balance the photography and this job, and something had to give. And I thought, well, I've got this far with my photography. I need to just bite the bullet. So I did. And 2010, I went full-time photography.
You know, all the time I've known you, you've been so creative about finding different markets where your photography is going to work. And I know you've got a particular affinity with children, I think probably because at times you can be quite childlike. And you like,
it's got to be. Life's too short to be serious.
It is indeed. But you do some amazing things with newborns and with, you know, very small children with cake smashes on their birthdays and just all sorts of different ways of being creative. Where do you get your ideas from?
Well, all of those ideas aren't brand new ideas, but what a lot of it is really is being able to get that affinity with people, so especially children. So I had people come in saying, "Oh, you know, my child, you know, they won't smile for the camera," and I don't worry about things like that. I said, "Don't worry, we'll just have fun. We'll just have a game. We just make it very silly." I'm called Silly Sally as well, not for, you know, and that's not wrong. You know, I have to be very silly. So sometimes I'll do a day at a nursery, and it's utterly exhausting because by the end of it, I feel like I'm the entertainer. But if you don't entertain and be very silly with the under fives, then you can't expect them to just sit and look at the camera. So that's what I do. Every shoot is almost like a performance, really.
Well, I know in your spare time that you are a very good actress and that you do amateur dramatics. I've been to see you on many occasions, and you've fulfilled lots of different roles. So I suppose it's two sides of the same coin.
It is like a performance, and I do actually a lot more photography now for the theatre. I'm not on the stage as much these days. I'm actually photograph the productions at a couple of theatres locally, and I think one of the reasons they like it is the fact that I have been on stage and I can anticipate the action, so I can grab it. I kind of can feel what's going to happen. I have a good feel for the theatre, but in the studio, yeah, it's really about you have got to keep it fresh, and it's not just about getting new ideas. It's the photography, yes, but it's about especially nowadays with a lot of competition around, it's about making people feel special, people feel important, doing something a bit different, not being exactly the same as everyone else, finding your own niche, and why people want to book me because I'm me and not because I'm just a photographer, if that makes sense.
I think it makes perfect sense, and not just as a photographer. I think that's true for anybody who's in business. It's how do you stand above the crowd, really?
Yeah. More recently, I've incorporated a big 4-foot white box into my studio, which makes a huge compilation of different images. So like 9 images will join together. It's quite hard to explain without any visuals, but it's something a bit different. It's not something I've invented. It's something I've seen and I've loved, and my clients love it. And they come in and jump in the box before they then go into their main shoot. So everything's really natural and relaxed, and it's fun. We use it to tell the family story ultimately. So I've had people doing baking in there, cracking eggs, firing Nerf guns, all sorts of things. It's just a bit silly, which is perfect because so am I.
I really want to talk about perhaps more seriously why you think, or why we both think it's so important that you grab life by the throat and you live every moment. So don't go away. So Sally, I know that you've had some challenges over the years, particularly in terms of the care of your mum.
Mm-hmm.
What lesson have you learned from having to support your mum who had dementia in terms of living life fully?
Where do I start? It does put life into perspective when something major happens like that. I mean, there aren't many people I've met now who haven't had or know somebody with dementia, you know, and that's really opened my eyes as to how many people are dealing with this. Mum was diagnosed in 2014. I knew something was slightly wrong the years leading up to that, and getting her to the doctors was quite a challenge. She was quite a strong lady, but yeah, going back, really, she cared for my dad for years. Okay, so what I've learned, there's lots of lessons here. My dad died in 2006. He had Parkinson's disease, and my mum's, bless her, she looked after him and cared for him right to the very end. And she was extremely stressed the whole time, and I would support her as best I could. Knowing what I know now, I think there is support out there that potentially she could have had, but she didn't really know where to go or where to look, didn't have the benefit probably of everything we've got on the internet nowadays, and all those sorts of things. So yes, that was tough. But what she used to say is, when he'd gone, that's it, I'm going to spread my wings, I'm going to do things. She was a rambler, she loved to walk and travel. She was going to do all of those things, and she didn't. And I never really got to the bottom of why. I really tried to encourage her to do that. She went on a couple of holidays, but then she went very into herself and I don't know whether that was the dementia or her confidence. She wasn't the most confident person, but she just seemed to lost her purpose in life. So purpose, have a purpose. It's really important.
You know, I've known people, I can think back when I was a head teacher or a principal, my site manager and his wife were always talking about what they were going to do when they retired.
Yeah.
And sadly, 3 years before they were due to retire, his wife died of cancer, and they never did it. And it taught me a huge lesson that actually, you know, we keep putting things off, we'll do it when. And the reality is that the when may never come.
Yeah.
And I can contrast that with my brother, who suddenly dropped dead at the age of 49. And the difference, I think, was that he lived his life every day full on. He didn't put stuff off. He, you know, if he wanted to explore and do something, he found a way to do it. And although his life was cut dramatically short, I always felt that he had lived his life as long as it was, absolutely to the maximum. And I look at my own life and think, you know, am I putting things off? Am I making excuses rather than grabbing life by the throat? Because we only have the now that we've got at this moment, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And funnily enough, my partner and I have had a similar conversation many times, because his dad is still alive but doesn't really do anything with his life. And he knows people that say, when I retire, I want to do this when I retire. And he said for years, why wait till then? Do it now. Why are you waiting? And okay, some things require time and a lot of things require money, but it's not all about money. And my focus has really changed. Yes, we need money to live, but we don't need, you know, we can be efficient with our money. We can be, don't have to be frugal, but we can prioritize what's important. And not everything costs money. We've just had a holiday in the UK, and he's converted a little van. We go off in that. It's not an expensive trip. Going out for a long walk isn't an expensive pastime. You know, it's about grabbing and going out and doing the things you love to do and not waiting.
I think that's such an important lesson. And for me, there is something around, lots of people equate doing things with the big expensive holidays or the expensive meals or the buying of stuff. And I think one of the things that I've noticed talking to people since the pandemic is how many have reassessed what's important in life and have recognized that it is people and the experiences that we have day by day that really make the difference.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I'm not interested in presents, birthday and Christmas presents anymore. I haven't been for quite a long time. I'm more interested, especially since the pandemic, you know, spending time with people. That's more important than anything. Than I don't need stuff. You know, those experiences are, you know, the things you do together, I think are far more valuable. And of course, I take plenty of photographs at any of these things. So I've always got plenty of photographs to look back on, which is what my brand is all about, really. It's about being able to look back and remember.
having those memories is very precious. Sally, we were talking about don't wait, and what's important. The people are important, and experiences are important. So let me ask you, what for you now? What are the things that you still want to do? What are the things that you're focusing on for the now?
Nothing major, really. We're doing a little bit of work in the house. My weekends, my time was taken because we lost mum in April this year. So it's finding finding myself again in a way. So I hadn't realised how all consuming that it was. Even though my mum was in an amazing care home, I would still go and see her. There would still be that guilt if I didn't go. She didn't know if I'd been or not. She used to just sit and smile, which was amazing. Of course, I was very lucky there. But so sometimes on a Sunday, I think, oh, I've achieved this and that, and I've been for a bike ride. What did I use? Oh, yes, that's what I used to do. So it's fine. It's finding my hobbies and the things I like to do again. And making sure that so my other half's now, he used to work shifts, he now has the weekend free. We have a bit of time for us now, so I try and keep that time clear and make sure that we do something that's together. Travel is always a high on our list. We like to go to places not necessarily far and wide, just enjoy. The UK has got so much to offer, countryside wise. I've been on a couple of retreats as well. I went one in March and I loved it. So I've got another one booked next March. And I almost need to put my mum's mouth where my mum's mouth was. I can't, you know what I mean? It's basically, she kept saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and never did. So I now have to say, I'm doing it, and actually do it. Because I think that's the key.
If people are listening to this, I want you to consider, what are those things that you've said you'd always like to do? And what can you do to make those happen? And I think sometimes, rather than saying, oh, I can't do that, because setting the intention, I'm going to do that, I don't quite know how, but I'm going to find a way. If it's that important, I'm going to find a way to do it. But I want to spend the last few minutes of the show that exploring the fact that it's not about doing only, it's about how you turn up moment by moment in life. It's how you are being. And one of the things that I've always enjoyed about spending time in your company is how you very much take what's going on now and find a way of making it fun and enjoying it. That you have that playful, and I'm not being rude when I say childlike. I think it's probably a great,
I don't mind.
a great compliment, because you see the awe and wonder in the world, that you're always looking with your photographer's eye and looking at that beautiful tree or the wonderful skyline and making the most of every moment. Is that something that you have done naturally, or is it something that that experience has taught you? Sorry, my terrible language, has taught you.
I think it's just become more in my conscious mind. I think it's interesting because my brother and I are quite similar in that respect. He as well always looks for the positives. He's a real go-getter, and I just think especially we spoke a lot in lockdown because he would join us on FaceTime with mum, so we'd have a lot of catching up, which was nice, and because he lives in Spain, he doesn't live in the UK. So we realized that we're both of the same ilk actually, and we're both quite positive, forward thinking. I mean, God, I'm not gonna lie, I don't get out of bed every day and go, yeah, amazing, the world's amazing, not at all. But what I've learned is that I can be in control of me, and that I can go out and just breathe for a couple of minutes. I know when I need to take myself off for a walk. I know when maybe I'm not in the place I want to be, and how to make myself get back there. Exercise is a huge thing for me. Got myself a spin bike during lockdown because I couldn't get to a gym or anything. I hate spin classes, but all of a sudden I'm addicted to it. That's really important for my mental well-being. Absolutely. So I wouldn't say I'm up there all the time, but I'd like to think that I am a positive thinker, and look for the best and look for the good in everything. And lockdown gave us, yes, it was pretty dire, but all I could do was look, there's got to be a positive here somewhere. So use the time that we had, and it's valuable.
It's a great lesson for life, I think. And I believe that there are many people out there struggling, living from a place of fear. And the trouble with fear is it puts you into a completely unresourced state. And if fear and anxiety were going to make things better, I'd say go for it. But they don't, they make it worse. I just wonder what your advice would be to somebody who's perhaps has a parent or a partner or a loved one who has dementia, and that's a real challenge. What are the pieces of advice that you would give to help them manage what can be so difficult?
Yeah, you need extreme patience, which I did lack in. I've got to be honest. I mean, nobody's perfect. Don't think for a second every moment was patient with mum. It wasn't. It's really hard, and actually, be honest with yourself. Very hard to say, don't feel guilty if you have a bit of a short moment with that person, because what you're doing is an amazing job looking after that person, and it's natural for your fuse to shorten at times. So do not beat yourself up. Get help, talk to people. And this is the one thing I found hard, actually. We've got a charity in the UK called Dementia UK, and they provide dementia nurses for families. So they'll go around and they'll support the families. There was none in our area because there was no funding for it. So any fundraising I do now is for Dementia UK to try and help that, because I didn't have help and felt very on my own. I went to some support groups. There are support groups out there. But I would just say, yeah, don't beat yourself up about it. And, dementia isn't the end of the world. Mum, I found some good daycare, and sometimes I go along with mum and we go on these trips and we do things. They took her swimming once. I went with them. We had some laughs, we had some fun. It's not the end of the world, but it is a tough journey.
I think that's really good advice. I'd just add one thing to that, and that is, if you are caring for someone, whether it's dementia or something else, be mindful of self-care, because you can't look after somebody else if you're ill. And caring for yourself, not just physically but mentally, and doing things that will fill your battery up as well.
Yeah, and people used to say to me, because I can look back at it now, people say to me, you've got to look after yourself, but I didn't really know how. They say, you've got to look after yourself. I heard that so many times, but I used to think, how do I do that? So now I'm not in that zone. I can say, yes, that's what I should have done. Maybe gone out for a walk, done my exercise. That's feed yourself properly.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, it's so hard to see that. When mums look after yourself, you think, how am I going to do that?
Sadly, we're at the end of the show, but before we go, we're very proud to be members of B1G1, Buy One, Give One, which is an amazing worldwide organisation that has projects all over the world. And we invite all our guests to choose from one of 4 projects. And the 4 projects that we are donating to on your behalf at the moment are clean water, feeding the hungry, education, or a project for young people in the Ukraine. Which of those 4 would you like us to donate to on your behalf?
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to repeat the first 2 because I wasn't expecting it. Sorry.
Clean water, feeding the hungry, education, or a project for young people in the Ukraine.
I think we'll go for feeding the hungry, please.
Okay, and then also, if you're listening to this, we donate meals based on the number of people who listen to the show. So please encourage other people to listen to the show. Just by listening, you are doing some good. And if you're a business person out there, then B1G1 is a great organisation. Giving can be part of your marketing, and it can really make a difference. Sally, where can people find you?
My website, sallyparkinson.co.uk. I've got a Facebook page, which is Sally Parkinson Photography, and I'm also on Instagram.
Brilliant. It just remains for me to say to you a huge thank you for joining me today. It's a real pleasure. I really value your friendship, And I look forward to seeing you. I think it's next week.
Yes, soon.
Thank you very much for joining me on the show. As listeners, please join me on the next show. If you want to work with me or let me know what you think, then email me at gina@ginagardnerandfriends.com. And I look forward to hearing from you. Take care. We'll be with you in the next show.